Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can discuss the mental health and personality factors that may be at work in the life and death of John F. Kennedy. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. So first I'll look at the background of John F. Kennedy, and then I'll move to the mental health and personality factors. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was born on May 29, 1917, in Brookline, Massachusetts. His father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., was a businessman and was active in politics. His mother, Rose Kennedy, was a socialite. Kennedy's maternal grandfather was at one time the mayor of Boston. Kennedy had 7 younger siblings and 1 elder brother, Joseph Jr. It has been reported that Kennedy's father favored Joseph Jr. over Kennedy. Kennedy had a number of health problems throughout his entire life, including when he was young. Just to name a few illnesses that he had at various times in his life: chickenpox, measles, ear infections, whooping cough, scarlet fever, ulcers, hepatitis, asthma, sexually transmitted diseases, high cholesterol, abscesses, colitis, hyperthyroidism, chronic back problems, and Addison's disease, which is often considered terminal. During high school, he was a bit of a troublemaker. He didn't do well academically, even though he was intelligent. He would graduate 64th in a class of 112 students. Kennedy traveled to Europe several times in the late 1930s. His father became an ambassador to Britain. He attended Harvard College and completed a thesis that would eventually be published in a book titled Why England Slept. He would graduate in 1940 with a Bachelor of Arts in Government. Kennedy was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Naval Reserve in October of 1941. At first, he was in a position where he would not see any combat. Kennedy involved himself in an affair with Inga Arvid, a reporter with controversial ties to officials in the Nazi Party. His father made him end this relationship. Kennedy was despondent about this. Arvid was the love of his life. Kennedy entered Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron's training and was given command of PT-101 in December of 1941. PT stands for Patrol Torpedo. This is a small, fast boat, typically armed with 50 caliber machine guns, 20 millimeter cannons, and torpedoes. But it could carry other armament as well. Kennedy actually removed the life raft of a later vessel, PT-109, to make room for a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun. This kind of shows his impulsivity. A single-shot anti-tank gun was not practical for a PT boat, and the installation was done by lashing the gun onto the deck. It wasn't properly installed. In 1943, Kennedy was sent to the Solomon Islands and placed in command of PT-109. During the New Georgia campaign in August of 1943, PT-109 collided with a Japanese destroyer and was cut in half, killing 2 of the 13 crew members. Kennedy's lower back was already in bad shape. This collision made it much worse. Over the next several days, Kennedy saved the lives of several of the remaining crew members as he swam from island to island, pulling an injured crew member behind him and finding water and food. Kennedy made several mistakes that may have led to the collision. Some of his crew members were asleep when they should not have been. A warning went out on the radio that the vessels were approaching, the destroyer was coming toward him, but he never received it because he didn't have anybody monitoring the radio. Also, when the destroyer was spotted, he pushed the engines to full throttle to engage that vessel, but the engine stalled, which was a foreseeable outcome from doing that. With PT-109 adrift, there was no way to avoid the collision. Some people believe Kennedy was actually responsible for the collision, which might explain why he was given a non-combat medal instead of something like the Silver Star. Kennedy said he was not a good boat commander, and he was ashamed of his performance that night. After recovering, Kennedy would command PT-59. This vessel had 40 millimeter cannons and 50 caliber machine guns with no torpedoes. It was used to support operations on the shore. During that time, Kennedy sought out the most dangerous missions, determined to get revenge for the loss of the 2 sailors from PT-109. Kennedy was racked with guilt. Some crew members referred to Kennedy as reckless. They thought he was going to get them killed. Kennedy would be honorably discharged in 1945 after his health deteriorated even more. Now, in August of 1944, Joseph Kennedy Jr. was killed in the European theater. He was piloting a BQ-8 aircraft, which was a converted B-24 Liberator bomber packed with explosives. He was on an unusual mission where the pilot and co-pilot were supposed to jump out of the plane and the aircraft was rammed into targets using radio remote control. He set the explosives and was preparing to jump when there was a premature detonation. He and his co-pilot were killed. The loss of John F. Kennedy's elder brother would have a significant impact on Kennedy's career. John F. Kennedy would work as a journalist for a short time and intended to continue that work or get a job in academia. But due to his elder brother's death, there was a pressure on Kennedy to enter politics. He served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1947 to 1953. Kennedy was bored with the local issues that he was dealing with in that position. He wanted to work more at the macro level, like international diplomacy. He ran for the U.S. Senate and was elected. He served from 1953 until 1960. He had a poor attendance record due to his health problems. Right before he was elected to the Senate, he met Jacqueline Bouvier. They would get married in September of 1953. His chronic back pain was quite pronounced by this point. He had several surgeries on his back. One almost killed him. He also took a number of medications to control pain. Kennedy would have a number of extramarital affairs over the next few years. He would be elected President of the United States in November of 1960. On November 22, 1963, Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas by Lee Harvey Oswald. Kennedy was 46 years old. Now moving to the mental health and personality factors. It's difficult to consider Kennedy's personality without looking at the contribution his father may have had. Kennedy's father was very involved in John F. Kennedy's life. He promoted competition among family members. He made sure that Kennedy was in the best schools. He helped him get into the military, even though Kennedy was technically medically disqualified from service. He spun the PT-109 story into a story of heroism and covered up Kennedy's incompetence. And he was instrumental in getting Kennedy elected to various offices. Kennedy's father was controlling. There are certain things Kennedy was not allowed to do. And in a way, of course, his father's strategy paid off. Kennedy was elected President of the United States, which is typically considered a noteworthy achievement. Kennedy felt as though his elder brother, Joseph Jr., was the favorite, as I mentioned before, and this seems to be true. But with Joseph Jr. dying, Kennedy's father put all his energy into promoting John F. Kennedy's career. Perhaps all that time on the sideline, watching his brother, made Kennedy more enthusiastically embrace his father's orders, happy that he was finally deemed good enough by his father. There has been speculation that Kennedy suffered from depression. I think this makes sense, if nothing else, because of all the medical issues. But I haven't seen any convincing evidence that he had episodic depression, like major depressive disorder. There's a difference between being depressed occasionally and having a chronic disorder. It's hard to know what was happening with depression in light of how much pain Kennedy suffered throughout his life. It appears as though much of the pain originated with his back and intestines. He regularly took Demerol and methadone and was given injections of procaine in his back muscles. Let's take a look at John F. Kennedy's potential personality profile. When I conceptualize personality, I use the 5-factor model. I remember the 5 traits through the acronym OCEAN: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So with openness to experience, we see a high level with Kennedy. He was artistic, creative, adventurous, willing to break from tradition, and a flexible thinker. With conscientiousness, we see both high and low facet scores. He was reckless, impulsive, and irresponsible at times, but at the same time, he could be engaged, very productive, and could demonstrate a good work ethic. Looking at extroversion, we see this trait as a bit controversial in this case. Kennedy was friendly, outgoing, assertive, and sensation-seeking, but he also had fairly good analytical skills and liked quiet time, suggesting low extroversion. Overall, though, I think his level of extroversion was probably on the high side. His level of agreeableness was probably mid-range. We see both high and low facet scores. On one hand, he could be antagonistic, he was not always straightforward, and he appeared to value competition. But on the other hand, it was reported he was modest, that he actually valued cooperation more than competition, and he was altruistic. As far as neuroticism, his level was mid-range, even though we see feelings of depression, difficulty resisting temptation, and perhaps anxiety based on the fact he took anti-anxiety medications. He was not self-conscious and rarely angry. I've seen some theories about Kennedy manifesting psychopathy. He did have superficial charm, he was fearless, and he was reckless, but the evidence doesn't support pathological psychopathy. His traits may have been subclinical, at a level where they may have actually been useful for him. Kennedy's accomplishments as president or in any other role can be debated, but most people agree that he, along with Jacqueline Kennedy, pioneered a new age of image management for politicians. The Kennedy family was great at projecting the right look. John F. Kennedy appreciated the value of superficial appearances. He had charisma, many found him attractive, and he knew how to win people over. Kennedy understood the value of perception, but the reality, in some cases, was quite different. We see he projected the image of the perfect family, even though he was having affairs, and the marriage really seemed to be just a necessary arrangement. He went along with the image of war hero, which can certainly be disputed. We see the image of someone who is healthy, vigorous, and would live for a long time. Kennedy once denied having Addison's disease, saying that no one who has it should run for president. Of course, we know Kennedy actually was severely ill and consumed substances excessively. The debate against Richard Nixon was a great example of the superficial charm. Kennedy appeared to be quite a bit younger, more energetic, and more intelligent, even though Nixon was only 4 years older, had an incredible record of academic achievement, and was actually quite enthusiastic in most endeavors. I think what really stands out about John F. Kennedy was his courage and determination, even if sometimes those characteristics were depreciated by recklessness. Kennedy would say that life was unfair. Some people are sick and others are well. He was remarkably productive and functional for someone so ill. It seems like a bit of an understatement to say he accomplished great things despite his illnesses. He lived his life as if he was not in terrible pain. He set his goals high. He took the help that was available to him, and he wasn't afraid to take chances. Even though it wasn't the case initially, he eventually transformed into an effective leader. Those are my thoughts on John F. Kennedy. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching.